For most of human history, the mind was treated as a ghost, an intangible, divine mystery. To study it as a science meant doing something unnatural, capturing human consciousness and translating it into measurable physical data. Before psychology could exist as a laboratory discipline, it had to be separated completely from theology. Thinkers needed a rigorous theoretical rationale to treat human behavior as a natural phenomenon. To build this new science, they had to engineer a logical framework. The foundation rests on answering three sequential philosophical questions. First, the ontological question: what is the actual substance of the mind? The answer supplied was materialism. Second, the epistemological question: how does that mind acquire its data? The solution was empiricism. Finally, the methodological question: what are the valid rules for measuring it? This required the strict doctrine of positivism. Mapping these three structural steps reveals exactly how the abstract study of human nature was engineered into a modern scientific framework. The first requirement for a natural science is a natural subject. Researchers needed to define the mind as a purely physical entity. They adopted a biological doctrine called materialistic monism. This is the assertion that absolutely nothing exists apart from the material, physical world. Look at these medical illustrations of the human brain. Under strict materialism, human consciousness is understood purely as a biological function of the nervous system. The brain and mind are identical. All cognitive processes reduce to the layout of cells and neural connections. Early behaviorists relied heavily on this premise. Because the mind itself cannot be seen, psychologists should ignore internal thoughts and measure only observable physical actions, namely stimulus and response. Anchoring the mind in physical tissue gave psychology a tangible base, but treating human beings as strictly physiological organisms quickly encountered unexplainable roadblocks. Strict biological materialism fails to account for phenomena where subjective experience directly overrides physical reality. A classic study placed participants in a deep hypnotic trance. Through unconscious suggestion, researchers told them they were being touched with a red-hot piece of metal, when the object touching their skin was actually a cold pencil. The participants' bodies reacted to the suggestion, not the object. Their skin rapidly swelled, forming fluid-filled water blisters as if they had actually been burned. The mind controlled a bodily reaction contrary to physical stimulus. This physical reaction to an imagined threat contradicts strict monism. It forces a return to a form of dualism, the view that mind and body function separately. Modern cognitive psychologists resolve this tension without returning to theology by using an artificial intelligence analogy. Look at this conceptual model, splitting physical hardware from abstract code. Here, the biological brain acts as physical hardware, while the mind operates as mediational software. If the brain is merely the blank hardware, researchers needed a separate philosophical framework to explain how that software is programmed by the outside world. This leads to the second pillar, epistemology. How does the mind acquire knowledge? The answer came from British empiricism, a protest against older philosophical models. Thinkers like René Descartes argued that humans possessed innate, pre-installed ideas granted by God. John Locke rejected this entirely. He observed that if the mind contained innate ideas, all humans would share them universally, and they clearly do not. Instead, Locke revived a concept tracing back to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, the tabula rasa, or blank slate. Locke argued that humans are born without any knowledge whatsoever. The blank slate is written upon through exactly one mechanism: direct sensory experience and mental reflection. To categorize this sensory data, Locke drew a critical distinction between what an object actually is and how we perceive it, separating primary and secondary qualities. To map the mechanics of learning, Locke first had to demonstrate that the physical world we inhabit is distinctly different from the psychological world we experience. Primary qualities are the objective, physical traits of an object that exist whether we perceive them or not. This includes attributes like size, shape, and quantity. Secondary qualities are subjective. Traits like color, taste, or pain do not exist in the object itself. They exist entirely in our act of perceiving them. Locke designed the paradox of the basins with cold, hot, and lukewarm containers. A person places one hand in cold, the other in hot. Moving both into the lukewarm basin produces opposite experiences. The cold hand feels hot, and the hot hand feels cold. Locke proved that temperature, the subjective experience of warmth or coolness, is a secondary quality. Subjective experiences operate on definable rules that can be studied as rigorously as physical matter. This raises the next logical philosophical problem. How do these simple, individual sensory inputs form the complex, higher-order thoughts of a human adult? The explanation lies in the laws of association, resemblance, contiguity, and cause and effect. When certain simple sensations are consistently experienced together, they combine. We know this mechanical process today as learning. James Mill viewed this process as passive, arguing the mind functioned like a predictable clock. John Stuart Mill recognized a flaw in that rigid view. John Stuart Mill introduced mental chemistry, arguing the mind actively associates ideas. Look at these three isolated sensory elements. Mixing red, blue, and green light synthesizes to create white, an entirely new quality not found in the raw ingredients. These complex ideas take on new characteristics. By proving the mind actively synthesizes data rather than just passively receiving it, empiricism provided the mechanical blueprint required for cognitive psychology. Materialism defined the substance of the mind, and empiricism defined its mechanics. Yet, the discipline still lacked a strict set of operational rules to govern laboratory research. The final methodological constraint was supplied by French philosopher Auguste Comte. He introduced the doctrine of positivism, demanding the social sciences abandon unanswerable questions of ultimate reality. Comte's law of 3 stages explains human understanding. The base is the theological stage, attributing events to supernatural powers. The metaphysical stage replaces gods with abstract forces. The peak is the scientific phase. Speculation is rejected. The goal is controlling phenomena through observable facts. This strict positivist mandate triggered a transition from armchair philosophy to hard science, giving rise to the experimental physiological laboratories of the 19th century. By bounding the mind in the physical world, mechanizing its learning process, and restricting its studies strictly to observable facts, philosophy engineered the exact theoretical engine necessary to power modern psychology.